My son called me a financial burden and dead weight, so I smiled and watched it all collapse. My son said I was just taking up space, that I wasn't contributing, that I was a financial burden, a dead weight dragging down his life. He said it while sipping from a coffee mug I bought in a house I paid for with my pension. I didn't argue. I just smiled, stayed quiet, and let him believe I was helpless. Because if he thought I was done, he had no idea what was coming. Before I begin, thank you for listening to my story. Let me know in the comments where and what time you're tuning in from. It means more than you know. It reminds me that I'm not alone in this. And if you'd like to share your story with me, feel free to email it. I'll drop my email in the description below. Now let me tell you what really happened. When my legs started giving me trouble, I never imagined it would be the beginning of my son pushing me out of my own life. I had tripped in the garden, twisted my hip, and spent 6 days in the hospital. The doctor said I'd need help getting around for a while, so Malcolm, my only son, offered to take me in. He said it made the most sense. He had space, he lived close by, and I'd helped him enough in his life that this was the least he could do. At first I believed him. I moved into the guest room of the house I'd helped him and Trisha buy. Years ago, when they were newlyweds, I used nearly my entire pension to give them the down payment. Malcolm had bad credit and Trisha was fresh out of nursing school. I believed in their marriage and wanted them to have a stable start. He promised he'd pay me back eventually. He never did. They bought the house together, but when they divorced 6 years ago, Malcolm stayed. Trisha moved out quietly. No drama. Just gone. I didn't ask what happened. I just kept mailing her birthday cards like I always had. She still called me Miss Viola when she sent thank you notes. I'd lived in that house before, back when I used to help with the kids on weekends. It felt familiar, but this time it was different. The air was colder and Malcolm's tone sharpened every day. At first it was small things. Him reminding me to turn off lights, watching how much I added to the grocery list, making passive comments about electricity bills. Then he cut off my debit card access to the shared account we agreed on for house expenses. He said it was just to simplify things. The real change came one morning over breakfast. I'd used the last of the butter on my toast and made the mistake of asking if he could pick up some more. He was scrolling through his phone and didn't even look up. "Mom, you know I'm carrying most of the weight here, right?" "What do you mean?" He looked up then and something in his eyes chilled me. "You don't work. You don't contribute. You've got no income except your little pension, which barely covers anything. I'm supporting you. It's just math." I set my tea down gently. "So what are you saying?" He shrugged, casual as ever. "I'm saying you're kind of a financial burden." That word hit me like a slap. He said it like it was a line from a budget report, not like he was talking about his own mother. The same mother who pawned her wedding ring so he could go to prom. The same mother who worked 2 jobs after Marcus died just to keep him in school. I didn't say a word. I picked up my toast even though it suddenly tasted like ash and chewed slowly. I told myself maybe he didn't mean it. Maybe it slipped out wrong. But he meant it. I could hear it in the silence that followed. Later that week he brought home a woman I hadn't met. She introduced herself as Della, his mother's home nurse. My nurse. Apparently he had hired her to lighten the load. He didn't ask me. He just did it. Della was kind, gentle but firm, with a sharp eye and a sense that she'd seen too much. She didn't say much that first day, but when she helped me into bed that night she whispered, "I've worked with a lot of families, Miss Viola. Yours ain't the worst, but it sure ain't right." The next morning I overheard Malcolm talking on the phone. He was in the hallway pacing back and forth, his voice low but not low enough. "Yeah, once she's settled and we've got the paperwork handled, I can move forward with the sale. She's got no clue. She thinks the house is hers." I felt my chest tighten. She thinks the house is hers. I had used my pension to pay for it. I was the reason that roof existed over his head. But no, the deed had been put in Malcolm and Trisha's name years ago because Malcolm's credit was shot and the lender required 2 names. I had trusted them. And when Trisha left, I assumed Malcolm had finalized everything. Turns out he didn't. And now, the house I believed would be mine in my old age, the house I thought I'd die in peacefully, was something he planned to sell out from under me. He called me a burden. He called me dead weight. I said nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. That night, while he laughed with friends in the living room, I asked Della to help me make a call. She nodded without hesitation. We stepped outside and she handed me her phone. I dialed a number I hadn't used in over a year. Cassandra Wynne. She was the daughter of a neighbor I used to garden with. Smart, sharp, and now a well-known elder law attorney in our county. I told her I needed to meet quietly. She didn't ask why. The next day she came under the pretense of a wellness check-in. Della made the arrangements. We sat in the sunroom and I told her everything. The pension. The house. The insult. The phone call. Cassandra listened, her face unreadable. Then she said, "Did you know Trisha's still on the deed?" My breath caught. What? She never signed a quitclaim after the divorce. That means half this house is still hers. Malcolm has no legal right to sell it without her signature. I sat back in the chair and felt the warmth of the sun on my face. And if Trisha were to sign her half over to someone else? Cassandra's lips curled into the faintest smile. Then this wouldn't be Malcolm's house anymore. I didn't smile back. But I nodded. Once. I think it's time I remind my son who really built this home. I didn't sleep much that night. Not from worry but from clarity. I lay there with the window cracked, the cool air brushing my cheek and my mind racing with everything I needed to remember. Every grocery bill I paid. Every daycare check I signed. Every inch of my pension that went into this house. I had spent my whole life helping Malcolm rise, and now he stood over me like I was something he had to shake off his back. By morning I had made my decision. Cassandra called just after sunrise. Her voice was calm as if this kind of betrayal wasn't new to her. I told her I wanted to move forward. If Trisha still had legal ownership of half the house, then she had the power to stop Malcolm. Or even better, give that power to me. We'll need her signature, Cassandra said. But more than that, we'll need her trust. I hadn't spoken to Trisha in nearly a year. Not because of the divorce, but because she didn't want to get in the middle of Malcolm's mess. Still, she'd always been warm toward me. Even after she left him, she sent me a card every Mother's Day. The envelope always said Miss Viola. Never just Viola. Always with respect. Cassandra offered to reach out first. She said it might be easier coming from someone who could explain the legal details up front. I agreed. That afternoon while Malcolm was at work, I sat with Della in the kitchen. She brought me a cup of tea and leaned against the counter like she'd been holding something in. I heard what he said the other day, she muttered. About the sale. I know, I replied. He thinks I'm blind. He thinks you're weak, she corrected. But I've been doing this a long time. The quiet ones. They're the ones people regret messing with. I gave her a tired smile. You ever seen a son throw his mother out of a house she paid for? More than I care to admit, she said. But I've never seen a mama let it happen without a fight. Not the ones who still got fire in them. I've got fire, I said. But I want to burn clean. That evening Cassandra called again. Trisha agreed to meet. We arranged a quiet lunch the next day at a little cafe near the courthouse. I hadn't been out of the house alone in weeks. Della helped me dress. I put on my soft gray sweater, the one Marcus used to say brought out the steel in my eyes. Trisha was already there when I arrived. She stood up when she saw me, a soft smile on her face, hands wringing nervously. Miss Viola, she said. You look good. You do too, Trisha. We sat. Cassandra explained the situation, showing her the deed and Malcolm's recent activity. Bank inquiries, realtor outreach, paperwork prep. Trisha's name was still listed as co-owner. Technically she could block any sale. But Cassandra's real proposal was different. Transfer Trisha's half to Viola. Cleanly, quietly, permanently. I didn't know he was trying to do this, Trisha said, shaking her head. He told me the house was his outright. Said he refinanced years ago. He didn't, Cassandra said flatly. Trisha looked at me then. I never would have let this happen to you. You gave us everything. I remember the day you handed Malcolm that check from your pension. I cried when you walked out. Told him he didn't deserve it. I hadn't known that. She reached into her purse, pulled out a pen and signed the paperwork. He doesn't deserve anything with your name on it. I didn't cry. I'd done enough of that already. I just said, thank you, and pressed my hand over hers. By the time I got back home, the wheels were already turning. Cassandra filed the transfer with the county clerk that same day. Within 72 hours, the deed would reflect the change. Malcolm would know nothing, until he tried to move forward. The next few days I played along. Malcolm acted chipper, busy. He ordered new cabinet samples and took calls in the next room with phrases like, clean clothes, and early offers. He even measured the living room for staging photos. "I'm thinking of downsizing," he told me one night. "You'll come with, of course, but something smaller. More manageable." He said it with a smile like it was a gift. I nodded and sipped my tea. "You still want to live with me, right?" he added offhand, like a man offering a stray dog space on the porch. "I trust you," I said. That night I sat with Della in my room. She was filing a report for the agency noting my vitals. She looked up suddenly. "Are you scared?" "No," I said. "He thinks he's walking toward something that belongs to him. But I already moved it." She looked at me for a long moment. "I hope I'm that sharp at 76, she whispered. "You will be," I said. "If you learn how to listen without answering. That's the part no one expects." Cassandra called the next morning to confirm. The deed had officially updated. My name was now on the house. Trisha was gone from it. Malcolm had never been on it. I made myself breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, the expensive butter I liked. I left the receipt out on purpose. Malcolm glanced at it and rolled his eyes. "Didn't I tell you we need to start cutting back?" "Of course," I said. "I'll be more careful." But I wasn't careful anymore. I was ready. And so was the paperwork. And so was the truth. Malcolm began moving faster after that. He printed out listing packets and walked through the house with a notepad like he was appraising a property he didn't live in. He made remarks like, "This carpet needs to go, and we can get good light in the morning here for the photos." As if I were involved. As if I were on board with being boxed up and pushed out of the home I had paid for. He started clearing things. Took down the old photos from the hallway, including the framed one of me and Marcus in front of our first apartment. He didn't ask. Just set it on the dining table and said, "You'll want to keep this somewhere safe." I nodded. I always did, even when my stomach turned. Della watched it all with a silence that was more statement than surrender. One afternoon, while Malcolm was out, she sat on the edge of my bed and whispered, "You sure you don't want to tell him?" I shook my head. "He'll find out soon enough. I want to see how far he thinks he can go." 3 days later, he brought over a real estate agent. Her name was Lindsay. She walked through the house in heels too high for wood floors and smiled at everything with a teeth-clenched politeness. "It's got good bones," she said. "But we'll need to declutter." I was the clutter, of course. I smiled at her anyway. Malcolm played the doting son during the walkthrough. Kept saying things like, "My mother's been here a while but we're making plans." As if I were a lease that could be cancelled with 30 days' notice. Lindsay asked to see the deed information so she could run comparables. Malcolm said he'd email her the details. That night, I watched him at the kitchen table typing away, sipping wine like he was already celebrating. He didn't look at me when he said, "You like the new place? Less to keep up with. You won't have to worry about the stairs." "I'm sure I'll manage," I replied. "You always do," he said. "But this is what's best for both of us." He had no idea he was talking to the owner. I went to bed early that night. My bones ached, but my heart was steady. Della came in later to check on my meds and found me humming. "You okay, Miss Viola?" "I'm fine, baby. Just thinking." "Thinking about what?" How many people walk themselves right into their own trap? The next morning, Malcolm was on the phone again. I heard him in the living room. I sent over the listing details. Shouldn't be any issues. I've lived here over 10 years. No liens. House is paid off. It's mine. I nearly choked on my coffee. Della sat across from me, one eyebrow raised. "He say that out loud?" "He did." "You want me to call Cassandra?" "No," I said. "Let her call me." At 3:17 p.m. my phone rang. Cassandra's voice was calm, but there was a hint of a smirk behind it. "He just found out," she said. "What did he say?" "He called the clerk's office. Asked why his name wasn't on the deed. They told him it never was. That the home was jointly owned by Trisha and someone named Viola Thompson. And now it's just you." I let the silence linger before I spoke. "Let's give him the weekend." When Malcolm came home that evening, I expected fireworks. Instead, I got confusion. He walked in like he'd been chasing shadows. Sat down at the dining table and stared at nothing. "You okay?" I asked. He looked at me, jaw clenched. "Did you know Trisha was still on the deed?" I tilted my head. "She was." He nodded. "Yeah. And now it's you." I sipped my tea. How did that happen? Apparently she transferred her share to you last week. Did she? He stood up suddenly. Did you plan this? I looked at him, quiet and steady. I paid for this house, Malcolm. Every brick. Every window. Every corner. You put your name on the credit, but I put my life into the foundation. That doesn't mean. It means you never respected what was given. And now you're angry that it's gone. He paced the room like a trapped animal. You're not gonna throw me out, are you? I smiled for the first time in days. No, Malcolm. I don't need to. You already walked out the day you called me a burden. He didn't speak to me the rest of the evening. Della stayed late just in case. You sure you're all right? I'm fine, I said. He's the one who's going to have a hard time sleeping. Later, I sat in the living room and held the deed in my hands. It wasn't just a paper. It was proof that silence can be louder than rage. That patience can be sharper than a knife. That a woman who's underestimated can still own everything. The house was mine. And for the first time since I moved in, I felt like I had finally come home. Malcolm didn't speak to me for 2 days. He walked around the house like he was the guest now, not the owner. He stopped making snide comments about what I watched on TV. Stopped muttering about the thermostat. Stopped questioning what I ate, what I wore, how long I spent in the bathroom. He still looked at me like I'd betrayed him, but there was something else in his eyes now. Fear. The man who once stood over me like a landlord didn't even knock on my door before entering anymore. He avoided it altogether. That was fine by me. I didn't need an apology. I just needed him to understand what it felt like to be powerless under the roof he thought you controlled. On the third morning, I found the real estate flyers in the trash. He had shredded them, but I could still make out the image of the house on the front page. Our house. My house. Later that afternoon, he knocked on the doorframe of the kitchen and stood there awkwardly. So what's the plan now? He asked. I stirred the pot of beans slowly, savoring the moment. Plan for what? For the house. You tell me, Malcolm, I said without turning around. It's mine now. I don't really need a plan. He stayed silent. I could feel him watching me. His pride was shattered and he didn't know where to put the pieces. I just thought, he said after a pause, that we'd at least talk about what happens next. I turned to face him, spoon in hand. What happens next is that you keep living your life. Same as before. Just without pretending everything under this roof belongs to you. He swallowed hard. So you're kicking me out? I'm giving you what you gave me, I said. Uncertainty. Silence. The weight of being tolerated instead of loved. He left the room. I finished cooking and ate alone. That evening Cassandra came by. She brought fresh copies of the finalized deed and some documents to sign updating my will. Della stayed nearby, sipping tea and listening quietly. I've also drafted a cease and desist, Cassandra said calmly. In case Malcolm tries to contact the realtor again using your name. It's clean. Your title is uncontested. No loopholes. Good, I said. And the trust. Filed and sealed. The house passes to whoever you name next. I looked at the last page. The name was already typed. Trisha Thompson. Della blinked. You sure about that? Trisha's the only one who ever treated me like I mattered, I said. Even when she wasn't family anymore. She won't even know she's the beneficiary unless something happens to you, Cassandra added. But it's official. He's out of the picture. Before she left, Cassandra handed me a small envelope. What's this? A letter, she said. Malcolm tried to hire another lawyer. They asked me if I knew anything about a fraudulent transfer involving his mother. Della snorted. I smiled. And what did you say? I told them if Malcolm wants a legal war, I've got 76 years of receipts and one very patient client who's ready to testify. After Cassandra left, I walked to the fireplace and lit the envelope. I watched the edges curl black, the paper folding in on itself like a lie exposed to daylight. The next morning, Malcolm made one last attempt. He waited until Della left and knocked on my door. Look, he said, I know we've had our issues. Our issues. I said things I didn't mean. No, Malcolm. You said exactly what you meant. You just didn't expect me to hear it. He looked away. I just want things to go back to normal, he said quietly. They are normal, I said. You underestimated me. Now you live with that. I didn't think you'd take sides. I raised my eyebrows. Sides? Malcolm, I was never your enemy. But you made me your problem. And now I'm done fixing you. He stood there for a few seconds, blinking like he was waiting for me to soften. I didn't. Are you staying here? I asked. He shook his head. No. I got some things to figure out. You always did. He left without another word. I watched from the window as he drove off in that leased SUV he bragged about, unaware that the loan behind it had been denied last week. Della had found the letter in the mail and left it on his dresser unopened. She never said a word. As I stood there watching the driveway empty, I realized it wasn't revenge I felt. It wasn't even triumph. It was peace. Like something long overdue had finally settled into place. The house was quiet that night. Quiet in the right way. And in the silence I realized this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. The silence after Malcolm left was more refreshing than I ever expected. For weeks I had been walking on eggshells in a house I paid for, answering questions about my spending, my eating, my breathing, as though I was a guest overstaying my welcome. But now I moved freely. I played the radio in the mornings. I opened the windows without asking. I sat in the good chair with my feet up, and no one dared to tell me it was too early for hot chocolate. It took a few days for the full weight of Malcolm's absence to hit me. Not because I missed him, but because of how quiet the phone had become. No more calls from banks. No more emails he printed and laid out for me like I couldn't read. No more passive-aggressive reminders about tightening up or cutting corners. Della came over on her usual schedule, but now her tone had shifted. There was more laughter in her voice, more time to sit and talk rather than document and report. She helped me organize my files, clean out the junk drawers Malcolm stuffed with bills I never saw, and rearrange the kitchen so I could reach the good pots again. One afternoon, I sat with a stack of mail that had come while Malcolm was still here. Most of it was unopened, addressed to him but using my name or variations of it. One envelope caught my eye, a final notice from a catering company. I opened it. It was an unpaid deposit. For a wedding. I stared at it for a long time before picking up the phone. Cassandra answered on the second ring. Are you sitting down? I asked. Why? Because my son used my name and address to pay for his wedding. You're joking. Not even a little. Catering, venue rental, and get this. The floral deposit was made using my pension-linked account. He must have gotten access months ago. There was silence on the other end. Then Cassandra's voice turned sharp. You didn't approve any of that, right? I didn't even know about the wedding. She exhaled. That's identity fraud and elder financial abuse. And poetic, I added. She didn't laugh. We can file. I'll draw up the papers. The next week we sat together in her office as she compiled the case. Della came too and brought a signed statement of everything she witnessed while working in the house. It included detailed notes about Malcolm's verbal mistreatment, the way he intercepted mail, and his comments about just waiting until she's too tired to fight. Cassandra filed a motion with the court and sent a formal demand to Malcolm. He had 30 days to respond. Instead of replying, he showed up at my door. He didn't knock. He stood at the bottom of the porch, his hands in his pockets, shoulders slouched, and eyes heavy with something I didn't recognize, shame. I opened the screen but didn't step outside. You used my pension to pay for your wedding? He swallowed hard. It wasn't like that. Then explain it. I thought I could pay it back. With what? The house you never owned. He looked away. They froze my accounts. The venue called off everything. My fiancé left. I blinked. She left. She said if I lied to my mother, I'd lie to her too. Well, she's right. He sighed. I don't know what to do. You could apologize. I'm sorry. Not to me, I said. To yourself. For thinking you were too smart to get caught. He stepped up one stair. Can I stay here a few nights? Just until I figure things out. I looked at him, the same boy I once carried on my back when his legs gave out during our walk to church. The same boy I pulled from a school fight when someone called him poor. The same boy I gave everything to so he wouldn't feel like the world had forgotten him. And now he was asking to be remembered. I don't have space, I said softly. You live here alone. No, I live here freely. That space took years to earn back. He nodded, but he didn't move. I'm not being cruel, Malcolm. I'm setting a boundary. Something you never learned to respect. I have nowhere else to go. I stepped out onto the porch just far enough to meet his eyes. Do you remember the first time you called me a burden? His eyes dropped. I do, I said. I remember how you said it like you were reading a receipt. Like I was some leftover charge. Like I was nothing but weight. Well, now you're carrying that word. And I'm not taking it back. He left without saying goodbye. That night I sat by the window and looked at the stars. I thought about Marcus. About how we wanted to pass down something better. We didn't have much, but we believed that if we gave with love, we'd get love in return. Sometimes that's true. And sometimes you learn the hardest truth of all. Some children are not raised wrong. They just grow up to be the people they were always going to be. The court case moved quickly. Malcolm never responded. Cassandra pushed forward, and the judgment was granted. Any attempt to recover money using my name would result in criminal charges. I donated the remaining pension money to a women's legal defense fund and kept the receipt framed above my desk. Della helped me redecorate the living room. We moved the recliner to face the window. I bought myself a new radio. On Saturdays I cooked for myself and turned up the music loud enough that I didn't need to remember anything painful. I didn't miss my son. But I never stopped loving him. That's the hardest part. Letting go of someone you'd still take back. If only they'd come with humility, not hunger. And now he was the one begging to be fed. And I was done setting the table. 2 months later I heard Malcolm had moved out of his condo. The realtor who handled his purchase called Cassandra directly, apparently trying to clarify a lien placed on the down payment. That money was mine. Drawn from a pension-linked account he accessed using forged documents and my address. The wedding was cancelled. The venue and vendors had pulled out. His fiancée, once eager to call herself his wife, had cut him loose the moment she realized what he'd done. Cassandra said she hadn't even waited for the dust to settle. 1 week after the vendors began sending threats of legal action, she packed her things and left. I wasn't surprised. But I wasn't satisfied either. Not in a vengeful way. Not the way people think revenge tastes. I didn't want him destroyed. I just wanted the scales balanced. For once. I had given up nearly everything to raise that boy. My youth. My rest. My retirement. My pension was never supposed to fund some wedding I wasn't even invited to. It was supposed to give me dignity in my old age. It was supposed to protect me. And it had, just not in the way I expected. It didn't buy me comfort. It bought me leverage. Cassandra made sure all of it was documented. With Della's statements, Trisha's support, and the original forged payment records, the court didn't hesitate. The judgment froze Malcolm's accounts, voided his claim on the property, and blocked him from initiating credit in my name ever again. Any new attempts would trigger criminal charges. He didn't contest it. He didn't even respond. I suppose there was nothing left to say. I used what was left of the pension to make final repairs on the house. Della helped me oversee the projects. New paint, weatherproofing the windows, refinishing the floorboards in the den. Not because I needed to sell, but because I wanted the space to feel mine. Fully, finally, completely mine. Once it was finished, I did something I never thought I'd do. I moved out. Not far. Just 5 blocks away, to a 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet senior living community. It was bright, quiet, and private. No reminders of Malcolm pacing the hallway with his phone. No memories of overheard insults. Just morning sun and clean silence. Trisha helped me move. She didn't ask for anything. Just carried boxes, fixed light bulbs, and made me tea on the first night I slept there. When she handed me the mug, she said, "You gave me a home when I didn't have one. It's only right I return the favor." We didn't talk about Malcolm. Not directly. But I saw the way her eyes dimmed every time his name came up in the mail or in court notices. She had loved him once. I had too. Sometimes love turns into something you can't even recognize, even as you grieve it. A month after I settled into the apartment, Della brought over some fresh groceries. We sat in the kitchen sorting beans and flipping through the community newsletter. "Did you hear?" she asked casually. "Your son's staying with a friend out in Jefferson Heights. Studio apartment. Half kitchen. Mattress on the floor." I raised my eyebrows. "You sure?" "Trust me," she said. "My cousin lives next door. Said he's been there for 3 weeks now. Doesn't even have his own key." I didn't say anything at first. I just kept picking through the black-eyed peas in the bowl. Della leaned back in her chair. "You could." "I'm not angry," I said. But I'm not proud either. She nodded. You don't have to be either one. You just have to be free. Later that week I received a letter. No return address. The handwriting was familiar. Sloppy, tense. I opened it and read. I'm sorry. For everything. I didn't see what I was doing until it was too late. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you're okay. I don't have anywhere else to turn. If there's still space in your life for me, even just a corner, I'd be grateful. By Malcolm. No threats. No pride. No demands. Just need. The next day, just after dusk, he showed up. He stood at the lobby of the senior complex, holding the same duffel bag I used to pack for his summer trips as a boy. His shoulders hunched like a man much older than 45. His mouth tried to smile, but it collapsed halfway through. I didn't know where else to go, he said. I stepped outside into the cool air and folded my arms. You found me, I said. I'm not asking for anything. Just a roof. For now. I looked at him for a long time. The boy I raised was gone. The man in front of me was broken in a way that I couldn't fix. And maybe that was the point. I had spent decades fixing everything for him, patching holes in his future while mine unraveled beneath me. I have food, I said. I have space. But I don't have room for what you carry. His eyes flickered. What does that mean? It means I built this piece with my own hands, Malcolm. I won't let your chaos take it apart. I'll do better. Then start with yourself. He looked at the bag in his hand, then back at me. You really won't let me in. I let you in for 40 years. You called me a burden. Now you understand what that feels like. Carry it. Learn from it. Then maybe you'll earn your way back in, not to my home but to my heart. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just nodded. Once. Then he turned and walked away. I watched him disappear down the street, the night swallowing his silhouette like a lesson too long ignored. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still. Later that night I sat in my armchair and pulled out my journal. I opened to the last page and wrote. He called me a burden. Now he carries the title. I closed the book and placed it on the table. The house was quiet, and so was I.